Hello everybody, welcome back to another video in my series of American Horror Story recaps. Today the blackboard returns because Dollar Tree did not have any in white, which also means I cannot draw any connections between the characters because I don't have a marker light enough to do so. Also, this color, interesting choice. Interesting choice. It's also very interesting. They didn't shoot an image in this wonderful red color for this character. And that's because he's not technically considered a main character. There are so few recurring characters in this show. He is one of them. And he is like the most important one, which I'll get into later. But I haven't given him a small picture because it would just look so silly compared to all these big pictures. And there's maybe only like one or two other recurring characters that I maybe would have put on this board. But like I said, it just would have looked so silly. My point is, this is not the color that I think of when I think of NYC. I think of the color that's on the posters, which is like a very light blue. So if I could draw using that color, I would, but I don't have that color because I'm on a budget. So we are settling for red today. Now, personally, I love NYC. There are some very, very bad issues with this season in terms of inclusivity. As you can see, there's literally one character here that's a person of color. And this season, if you didn't know, takes place in New York City in the 80s and is about gay and trans issues around that time. We will be talking about the AIDS crisis at some point in this video. That may or may not be a big portion of this season. So you may be asking yourself, where are all of the black, gay, trans men and women? And where are the lesbians? Literally, where are the lesbians? Lesbians of color, gay men of color. Ryan Murphy just constantly lets everyone down when it comes to inclusivity, and he's really lost his touch, I fear. It's abysmal how many white male characters are in this show. I have the hardest time remembering their names because they are all very, very, very basic names. His name is Sam. His name is Adam. His name is Patrick. His name is Gino. His name is Henry. So the male characters in this season have no separate qualities from each other. All of them are just terrible. The only one that we stand in this household is Gino Borelli. Everybody else is kind of a piece of shit. Or just boring. Really boring. Gino is the only one that I feel like is a real person here. Patrick develops a little bit more as the season goes on, but everybody else, like all the other gay men, are just stereotypes. Breed horrible images for gay men. That being said, do I think that NYC tackled its issues fairly? I think so. I think that there was definitely some interesting metaphors that they decided to choose, and y'all will see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Overall, American Horror Story has just never tackled social issues correctly, or even historical issues that happened in the past. Think the Anne Frank situation from Asylum, Cult, and the 2016 election. That was the flop. That was the flop of that season. Here, the big thing is AIDS. Technically, nobody knows what it is at the start of the season, but the audience knows that it's AIDS. It's in the 80s. In New York City, where that was like one of the main hubs. Another big issue that I have with this season is the female perspective is completely thrown out the door. 4 out of like the 11 main characters on this board are female. The only one that gets like more than 4 episodes of screen time, I would say, is Dr. Hannah. Everyone else, you can forget about them. You can forget about them. There's one episode in particular that actually spends the entire episode developing their characters in the middle of the season because they hadn't been developed yet. And they are just kind of relegated to that one episode and that one storyline, which I'll get into. The lesbian female perspective is just completely shut down. And they literally play this for laughs. They acknowledge the fact that white gay men were the most privileged people in the LGBTQ plus community, while also shitting on every other person in the community within the show. Ryan Murphy, that is an interesting man right there. I also just think that there's too many characters here. Too many characters, too many of them are underdeveloped. Half of the gay men on this board could have been shrunken, they could have been combined, they could have just been cut altogether because there is no other room for characters that are people of color. Like, there's not a single main character on here that is dark-skinned, and that's just really unfortunate. I'm so sorry, but half the gay men on this board could have gone. I don't know. That's one of my main complaints about the season. Other than that, the story is actually pretty good throughout. I would say the first few episodes are very jarring because every single scene lasts about 10 seconds and you feel like you have to catch your breath like after each scene. Like there's just so much information happening all at once, like getting thrown at you at the speed of light, and it doesn't mellow out for like 3 or 4 episodes. So whether or not you want to count that as a negative, that's up to you. I think American Horror Story has definitely had this issue with the whole like 10 to 12 main characters in a 10 episode season before. It definitely had that issue in Apocalypse, kind of had it in Roanoke. And then definitely in Double Feature. That one was just too many characters, not enough development to spread across each character. I would definitely have cut this cast at least by like 25%. 7 or 8 main characters, that would have been better. This is like literally 11. Literally 11. And there's other characters that I did not include on this board who also got portraits, but they're not listed as main characters, so this whole thing just doesn't make sense. All right, I think I've yapped for long enough. Let's get on into the characters. So first we have Gino Borelli. Pseudo main character this season, I would say, personally, it's a tie between these two, but I really do think it's mostly on Gino because he kind of spends a majority of the season not being a good person. He is a disgruntled gay reporter for the Native there in New York City. He basically this whole season is kind of giving Lana Winters just a little bit. He's channeling his inner mother. We also have his boyfriend Patrick, who is a cop. So there you can see there's a conflict of interest happening there. Clearly issues going on in their relationship as of the first episode, and we'll get to see a lot of their turmoil together. Patrick is not out. Patrick is closeted, and Gino is out loud and proud. And next, we have Leslie Grossman, who is playing Patrick's ex-wife, and her name is Barbara. She doesn't do anything. Literally doesn't have anything to do. She's just there, which is so unfortunate. Such a waste of Leslie Grossman's talent. She literally has like nothing to do. I think she's in like 3 or 4 episodes this season. Such a misuse of Miss Grossman. She's also a lot more subdued than her previous roles, that being Leslie Grossman. Leslie Grossman usually plays like really over the top, as you know, very loud characters, and she is giving like Christian that goes to church every Sunday and prays before every meal without the Christian part. Next, we have Fran. Now, Fran is the one lesbian that we get in this show. And like I said, they don't spend any time really with her. She has like an interesting episode in the middle of the season that's like basically dedicated to her. Now next we have Mother Kathy Pizzazz. She is a bathhouse singer. There's just so much wasted potential here. Like in terms of the performance, the singing is iconic. Other than that, I think she's maybe in 4 scenes where she has dialogue. It's just such an unfortunate waste. But the singing scenes. Next we have Dr. Hannah. Now, she is in a good portion of the season. She is a doctor and she is researching this new virus that's happening in the city, and she's like bamboozled. She doesn't know what it is. I really think that if she had gotten more time to develop the character, maybe it would have been a better performance. Next, we have Adam. Adam is milquetoast, okay? He has nothing going for him. Absolutely nothing. Any redeeming qualities, really. I can't really tell you anything about him. I think the show thinks he's the main character, but I would argue it's really Gino. He starts working for Gino at some point in the season, and he's just there. He's literally just there. Up here we have Henry. He is a mob boss. He's a mob boss, babes, or he works for a mob boss or something. Kind of a waste of Dennis O'Hare. I mean, he has an interesting performance here. It's just down to the writing. It's just down to the writing. I think that they've consistently miscast Dennis O'Hare since Roanoke. Like literally, I have not liked a single one of his characters maybe since Hotel. Obviously, Liz Taylor was Mother. Like every 5 episodes, he'll just show up and be like, hey, I'm in this season, remember me? Next, we have Mr. Whiteley. Now, Mr. Whiteley, I'm gonna go ahead and spoil it for you now because it's not really a spoiler. You learn in like episode 2. He is a serial killer that is stalking New York City gay men. He's interesting. He's an interesting fella. Performance kind of serves just a little bit. I don't want to say I like this character because the dangerous stereotype of having a gay man be a monster in a show or a movie is just getting a little tiresome to me. This show does it just about 100 times. It goes beyond his performance for me. I just don't like the writing. Like his performance is good, but I don't like that we constantly need to have gay men be portrayed as the villain. Literally always. Next we have Sam. Another one. Love Zachary Quinto. Again, nothing on the performance. I'm getting really tired of having gay men be terrible people. He is not a killer per se, but he is into some DSM. And he is just kind of a piece of shit. Kind of really a piece of shit. Not really a redeeming quality in there. Then we have, lastly, Theo. I think that's his name. He is a photographer and he is dating Sam. He was also in Death Valley and I had some pretty awful words for him because he was really bad in that season. He's a lot better in this one because this season is just inherently written better, but still as a character, there's nothing for me to cling on to. I'm so sorry. There's nothing there for me. These two might as well be the same character. I'm so sorry they could have merged. Fun fact, the same year that this came out, Dahmer came out. Both made by Ryan Murphy, by the way. He just loves to expose queer trauma and loves to profit off of it. I will cover any other Ryan Murphy show before I step near that show. I love Evan Peters, but it's just bad. So we begin on May 17th, 1981. We see an airline captain named Captain Ross. He's secretly in the closet. He goes to a meetup spot, and that is when he is attacked by a man in a leather ensemble, kind of reminiscent of the Rubber Man from Murder House. We then move down a whole day to day 1, May 18th, 1981. We see Patrick Reed, who is a detective for the NYPD. He is investigating the circumstances of the beheading and murder of the pilot. In the first 4 minutes of the episode, we are introduced to not only the captain, we see the captain die, we see the captain's body being investigated by Patrick, and finally we jump back into another scene in the first 4 minutes, and this time it includes Dr. Hannah Wells as she is doing some tests on some local deer on Fire Island, which is an island near New York City.
Thank you.
Oh, Captain Ross.
Hey, Tawny. I was just having a quick nightcap with the other girls. They were wondering where you were.
Oh, you know, off to get some ice. I'm just bushed.
A very nice offer, Tawny. I'm extremely flattered. But I'm also...
Just like some kind of vision. Let my pistols click, make my shit comes in. Yeah, all the things that we haven't done yet.
Neck was severed around the 4th cervical vertebra, right through the vocal cords.
The levels of multiplication and mutation are more rapid than anything I've ever seen.
Talk to the mayor, chief of police. At this level of mutation and multiplication, we can have an epidemic on our hands in months.
I've been taking samples from deer carcasses out on the island for over a year, ever since the first buck died with similar symptoms.
Look like a family.
Whatever this virus is, it's highly communicable, and it could be mutating too quickly for the deer's immune system.
She eventually orders all the deer on the island to get killed, and again, we don't get any context as to what's going on, but apparently they are carriers of a very bad disease that is unknown. We then meet Fran and her other friends as they barge into the native's office and verbally criticize Gino for not including the lesbians in any conversations.
Where's Gino Borelli?
We want to lodge a formal complaint.
What do I look like, your hairdresser?
Ha! Your paper is here to serve the gay community, but you're ignoring half of it.
Why don't you ever write about women's health issues? How the ERA is completely stalled out, how we can't get access to health care.
Yeah.
And suddenly we learn from Gino that there has been a string of murders in New York that are particularly targeting gay men, and so that's like his justification for the fact that he's not talking about the lesbians. We then get a scene, again, this is in the first like 5-10 minutes. It moves very quickly compared to other seasons. We learn that these two are dating, and then we get our first like extended scene of the episode where they argue about the fact that his precinct is homophobic and doesn't listen to the people, aka Gino, who is often very critical of the NYPD. The thing I really don't like about the first few episodes of the show is that it's just exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump, and there doesn't really seem to be much character growth happening. The season so far is written pretty badly. Things just jump from scene to scene to scene, but as the season goes on, it gets a little bit better. This scene just goes on and on and on between these two. He wants to leave Patrick because he is not out and proud like he wants him to be, and Patrick argues for their relationship to be intact because he's good in bed.
The sham of a relationship. Hey, no, don't say that. It's not a sham.
I did not go through everything that I've gone through in my life to go back into the closet for a guy who does not want to be what he truly is.
Yeah, maybe, but I am very good in bed.
That's the writing that we're dealing with here. We then get a scene with Adam. His friend Sully is trying to convince him to get over a heartbreak and go out cruising. This is when they are attacked and kind of split up by this man in the leather costume. The next day, it is day 2, May 19th, 1981. Adam reports the incident to the NYPD and basically tells Patrick, you guys don't care about us gay people, like you're ignoring us. And Patrick just has to pretend that he's not a gay man himself. And he's like, there are some of us that do care, actually. But he fully does dismiss what Adam is saying. Like, he's like, I can't do anything for you. So it's like, do you really care? We then jump all over again. We go to a bathhouse, and this time we meet Kathy. She gives a very spirited performance here. Again, has no dialogue. While this is all happening, we see Adam meet Gino in the bathhouse. He basically gives him his phone number and tells him to keep in contact with him because they both share the same concerns about gay men going missing. And while Adam is there, he also sees Theo, who's hanging out with a couple of other guys, cheating on his actual boyfriend, Sam, but I think they're actually open. He gets word from one of the men at the bar that he knows something about the leather figure that he saw the night prior, and seeing as his best friend Sully is missing because of that figure, he would like some answers. So the next day, it is now day 3, May 20th, 1981. He heads to Theo's house and tries to have some conversation with him about how he knows that guy in a leather costume. Theo, by the way, is a photographer, and he's taking some very suggestive photos of some gay men in his apartment. And we'll learn why that is in a minute, but basically he tells him that the guy, his name is Big Daddy, and he used to photograph him. Yes, his name is Big Daddy. Oh my goodness. This is one of the aspects of the season that I'm just not a fan of. Basically, he sends him packing because his boyfriend, Sam, has just arrived, and they have a long conversation about how he feels like the streets aren't safe anymore and how there's something coming. There's this very vague thing that all the characters always feel in this season. They're like, something's coming, something's bad coming, but they don't like, I mean, it eventually makes sense, but it takes a while to get there. Later that night, we see Patrick talk to Gino about gay hookup code because one of the bodies that he found had a handkerchief stuffed down into his esophagus. Patrick is asking if there's any significance to that whole situation, and Gino is like, there's something so funny about you young, in the closet, DL guys. You just don't know anything about our code. And he explains like everything to Patrick. Patrick tells Gino that because he is a cop, it's kind of frowned upon, I guess, at his work to go investigate gay bashings and disappearances. So he tells him to go out and do some undercover reporting for him at some bar. Meanwhile, we finally get our first look at Barbara. She and him discuss their divorce because they are in the middle of doing that. I think they actually signed the papers in this scene, if I'm not mistaken. Also, the framing and cinematography of this scene. And we also get our first look at Henry at the bar. He's having a conversation with Gino, and Gino is like, do you know anything about a man that's picking up all these gay guys and killing them? He tells him that he frequently sees the guy leave with much younger gay men, and he usually goes after the men that have Mai Tais. We also get the scene that's interlaced with the last one where Patrick returns home and looks through a box of his old things, and we learn that he does know what the bandana / handkerchief code is because he has like 10 of them in this box and a bunch of other BDSM paraphernalia, I guess. So he completely lied to Gino about knowing what the gay code is. This also leads us as an audience to believe that he is the killer when that's just not the case.
I'm not looking for the darkness as an idea. I'm looking for a man. A man who kills. I think he's been in this bar.
I've seen him.
This reveal is happening while Gino is talking to him about the guy that spikes Mai Tais and steals the young gay men. I don't know if this is just a poor editing choice or they're trying to mislead us. After finishing his drink, Gino leaves the bar and is kind of stumbling over himself when it's revealed that he has been drugged. He's been drugged by this killer. And it wasn't Henry. It wasn't Henry. But this man, his name is Mr. Whitley. He takes him to his apartment. And at the end of the episode, we see notorious creep Sam up here pick up one of the men at a bar, basically promise him a career in Hollywood. So he's taken to Sam's house, and that is where the episode ends. We learn it is still day 3, May 20th. We see Gino is being tortured by Mr. Whiteley. He is getting under his skin with needles and shit, and then he sees like a tattoo on Gino's arm or something, and it's like a symbol of being a veteran. And this gets Whitley to let him go because he himself is also a veteran, and he doesn't want to kill another man who was in the military. The next day, it is day 4, May 21st, 1981. We catch back up with Dr. Hannah, who is seeing Sam, and she basically diagnoses him with some kind of STD. A specific kind of STD that's very rare, that's just in the early stages of like being diagnosed. Like in the last few months, she says it's very rare, but she's seen it more and more as the last few months has gone on. We also see Gino. He publishes an article about his abduction the night prior, detailing everything, claiming that this is like a call to action for gay people. Like, all of us need to come together, petition the police to do something about this. And Adam arrives. Basically, he hires him as a journalist despite having absolutely no prior experience. We then jump down to the next day. It is now day 5, May 22nd, 1981. We see Adam is falsely arrested by the NYPD, then finally let go by Patrick because he obviously doesn't believe that Adam did anything wrong. He's just doing what his precinct wants him to do. The next day, it is now day 6, May 23rd, 1981. Whilst walking down the street, Gino receives a box from Barbara that she claims belonged to Patrick and contains some interesting things from his past in it. Later on, we see Sam invite a man over to his house using a payphone. We then see Patrick and Gino take matters into their own hands and go do their own investigation at one of the gay bars. And while they're there, they witness a stabbing, which is done by Mr. Whiteley, who narrowly escapes. We get a scene where Fran talks with Hannah about government conspiracies and that it's probably the government's fault that everybody's getting sick nowadays. She has some very interesting theories because she can't go to Gino. Gino just doesn't believe her and doesn't want to speak out for her. So the only thing she has going for her right now is to go to a trusted medical professional and talk to her about all her gay friends that are like getting sick. The next day, it is day 7, May 24th, 1981. We see the man that Sam kidnapped. I think his name is Stuart. He escapes from Sam's house and then tries to go to the police, but then decides, I guess, not to tell them all the situation because he doesn't want to get outed. Yeah, and I think that's where the episode ends. So episode 3 is really short, not much really happens. We do find out, I think this might have happened at some point in episode 2 that I just forgot to mention. These two are now kind of flirting, just a little bit. Even though he is dating him, he is now flirting with Adam. Somehow, throughout the course of the episode, the Big Daddy guy physically burns down the bar, leaving basically everybody injured. Meanwhile, at the end of the episode, everyone is rushed to the hospital. Gino confronts Mr. Whiteley, who he believes might be behind this. Whiteley eventually leads him to the morgue and basically puts his body in one of the freezers. Also, all of that still happens on day 7, May 24th. All right, we are still on day 7, May 24th, 1981. At the beginning of the episode, Patrick somehow finds Gino's body in the morgue and gets him out of there. And then we move on to day 8, the next morning, May 25th, 1981. Gino decides to interview Kathy, who is one of the bathhouse singers, about her relationships with the gay community, if she's seen anything regarding the killings and disappearances. The NYPD eventually does find another body. This is when New York goes black. All the power grids go out and there's a massive power outage throughout the city. At some point in this episode, we see Patrick come out to his precinct before he declares that he's going to go out and look for the killer that's been terrorizing the gay community. So props to Patrick for finally coming out. He heads to Central Park and looks for Mr. Whiteley, but is greeted by Big Daddy instead. We see Mr. Whiteley abduct 2 other gay men while in an elevator. And later on in the episode, Gino is taken to the hospital by Patrick, and he is then diagnosed by Hannah as having cat scratch fever. Obviously, this is a misdiagnosis, and he has something else. I also completely forgot to mention this. I'm just going to mention it now. Adam is Hannah, the sperm donor. The show never mentions to us how they know each other. They just are all of a sudden best friends, I guess. And that is the end of episode 4. The power eventually does come back on. Alright, so episode 5 is one of my favorite episodes of the season. It takes a little bit of a break from the main plot and focuses solely on the female characters, specifically these 2 down here. We learn that Kathy owns a fortune teller shop, I guess, and Fran walks in looking for a job there. She interviews with her and basically explains the basics of being a psychic. Obviously, it's not real. This happens on day 9, May 26th, 1981. The next day, which would be day 10, May 27th. We also learn in this episode that randomly Barbara collapses during the finalization of her and Patrick divorce, and she is taken to a hospital. Meanwhile, Patrick is at Barbara's apartment watching her new dog, I think, or her new cat. I think it's a dog. And he is attacked by Big Daddy, who's just randomly in her apartment. We also get an extended scene here that finally gives us the reveal of what Mr. Whiteley's motive is. He explains to 2 guys that he kidnapped that he is going to draw this like Frankenstein's monster of gay men in the middle of the Pride Parade in about a month. So yeah, that's what he wants to do, I guess, to draw attention to gay suffering. And finally, on day 11, it is now May 28th, 1981, Gino heads to the fortune teller and Fran gives him a reading. This is when, randomly, the Angel of Death from season 2, Asylum, shows up and makes her return, but it's not Frances Conroy, unfortunately. It's a stand-in. This episode toys with the paranoia surrounding all of these gay people's lives. Each of them kind of has their own battle this episode, specifically Adam and Gino. So the episode begins with 2 guys on Fire Island, and they discover a dead body that's been buried in the sand. We learn here that Patrick and Sam know each other. They are headed to Fire Island to deal with this body that's been dug up. Basically, one of the guys that actually dug up the body knows that Patrick is gay through a friend of a friend, and knows that the police won't do anything about it, so they call the only gay cop that they know about, and that is Patrick. And this is when Patrick tells Sam that they have a problem. So Gino decides to team with Henry for some reason. I think Henry has been told by his boss to crack down on the reporting done by Gino, but Henry decides to ignore that. And he follows Gino, who's following Patrick, to Fire Island because he wants to know what Patrick is hiding. And when they get to Fire Island, we learn a crucial piece of information about Patrick.
The remains will be scattered all the way around here. We need to get those remains in our bag and bury them somewhere safe.
Safe? What is safe for a rotting twig, Patrick?
You know what? Just get digging. This poor kid deserved way more than this.
But you killed him anyway. Henry, who the fuck is this?
Hello, Sam. I brought him. He wanted to know about the killer. I just left out the part that the killer was his boyfriend.
What the fuck is going on here, Patrick?
We get a flashback to July 7th, 1979, just a few years ago, Patrick went to Fire Island for the first time, and this is when he first decided to explore his sexuality while he was still married to Barbara. Basically, there's this whole threesome situation gone wrong. Him and Sam meet each other, and there was a third guy named Billy whom they accidentally took too many drugs with and killed him by accident. It's a little too graphic for me to explain on this platform, but if you want to know what really happens, go watch it yourself. And this is when it's revealed that Sam was in cahoots with Henry. He calls Henry over, and Henry because Henry is a problem solver, and Henry brings with him none other than Mr. Whiteley. Now, I don't believe Patrick knows that the guy that's been doing this is the same guy that helped cover up a murder that he committed a few years ago, but it makes for some really interesting tension in this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes of the season. I think this is when it starts to really pick up. I mean, episode 5 was also really good, but yeah, like I said, the first half of the season is just not as good as the second half, as you guys will see. So Gino and Patrick decide to team with Henry to go confront Whiteley because he, I think, tells them that that's who's doing all of this, and this fails. This fails miserably. When they go confront him, Henry is kidnapped by Whiteley because Whiteley suspects that he's working with the police and a reporter. He eventually gets his ear cut off, so Gino and Patrick are also captured by Whiteley. I don't know how they were able to get captured by him alone. He's literally alone. Eventually, Henry makes his way out using a bone saw, and he saws his own handcuff off and his own hand off in order to grab the keys and free Gino as well. Before Whiteley can kill Patrick, these two arrive and set Patrick free, which allows for Patrick to shoot Whiteley.
You, I was testing you. It's like that man in the leather bar. I just knew right away he wasn't worthy. A little bit. I have my demons. I faced them that night. You hired me to cut up that boy, Henry.
And Whiteley dies. The gag. Also, by the way, this all still happens on day 12, which would be May 19th, 1981, carrying over from the last episode. So the Mai Tai killer, as they call him, Mr. Whiteley, is now dead, and that allows Gino to finally break the story. Actually, now that they have some proof.
Pride. What does that word mean in the face of so much death? Death is an old friend, someone every gay person has known their whole lives. In a glance, or in a kiss, death is always lurking around the corner.
We also see Fran, Hannah, and Adam devise a plan to get this information out to the public about there being a sickness, an illness going around. So we will see what comes of that in the next episode. So really these last 3 episodes are focused on this illness that's going around New York City, seeing as Mr. Whiteley, who's the main antagonist of the season, has been killed off in episode 7. I also completely forgot to mention, these two are now dating. I don't care. I don't care at all. He has left Sam. Basically, everyone who's still alive on the board heads to Fire Island, minus Hannah. I think she stays behind in New York City because they're all going on a vacation, and now all of them are friends somehow, besides Sam, who's still kind of giving creep vibes, and Theo wants nothing to do with him. On the island, there's hundreds of gays everywhere. It's a party, but everybody on the island is now being stalked by Big Daddy. Sam also basically pimps his ex-boyfriend out to Henry while they're on the island. He drugs him, takes him and ties him up to a tree, and he's completely out of it at this point, and allows Henry to go and do whatever he wants. Disgusting. We also see this Big Daddy character get shot by Patrick after he tries to attack Adam and Gino, but his body disappears. So that is yet another clue that this Big Daddy character is not real and that he's more of an entity. By the end of the episode, Theo overdoses while being tied to a tree. Big Daddy essentially kills him. And this is where the audience kind of figures out the fact that Big Daddy is sort of like a metaphor for AIDS, like the visualization of AIDS. And it's revealed here that he died because he was sick. This is not for everyone. I personally think it's hit or miss with the Big Daddy stuff. There's a couple things that are really confusing to me, like how did Big Daddy physically set fire to a bar if he's literally just an imaginary like being that you see when you get AIDS? They didn't execute it the best, but I do like the way that they handle AIDS. Like, they don't make it a big thing from the beginning because nobody knew what it was in the beginning. And I like that it was very subtle in its approach of tackling this subject. Oh my goodness. We also see Hannah, who is attacked by Big Daddy and dies in her apartment. Hannah dies. There are literally no more female characters. Oh wait, no, we have these two, but Kathy I don't think shows up in another episode. Like, she is just completely forgotten about. And Fran, well, she's just, like I said, she's just there. Like, nothing really happens to her character in the end. I think this is for the last episode that she's in. I don't think she's in the 2-part finale. And jumping down a few days, we finally see it as day 19. June 5th, 1981. At Theo's funeral, we see Sam is obviously really distraught because he was in love with him. Sam, he's not looking too good. Not looking too good at all. And the audience kind of figures out that maybe he might have AIDS. Sam collapses and is hospitalized. So it's not looking good for all these girlies. Alright, so the 2-part finale is a little bit controversial. Not many people liked it. I'm one of the few people who actually did like it. It's kind of an issue though, because literally nothing happens. The last like 20 minutes of the episode is literally a montage. It's also told completely out of order, and a lot of the things are dream sequences. Most of the characters now have AIDS and are on their deathbeds. Specifically Sam, we see a lot of his visions of Theo. He's on a hospital bed in 1987. We jump all the way down there. So I'm gonna go in order of the events that actually like happened historically and not in the order that they're presented to us in the episode, because that's just much easier. So we jump down to day 25. It is June 11th, 1981. In the shock of Hannah's death, Adam spends days looking through her research, trying to come to a conclusion of what this thing is. Also, the fact that his boyfriend died as well, like on the same day, they both died. So his baby mama and his boyfriend died on the same day. He also attempts to tell everyone around him what this illness is, but nobody really listens. And around this time, we finally see that HIV/AIDS is considered a rare cancer in predominantly gay men. And that is thanks in part to Adam and Gino's work to get this out to the public. Then we jump forward all the way to 1987, so a whole 6 years later. It is now June 5th, 1987. We see Sam, like I said earlier, he is on his deathbed, having visions of people like Henry and Theo, and we eventually see him die. We then jump down again, this time to September 5th, 1987. We learn that these two are still together all these years later, and Patrick has HIV at this point.
Okay.
The blindness is permanent.
But I mean, can you operate? It's a detachment, so you reattach it.
AIDS patients aren't eligible for these kinds of operations.
You know, this is what you people always say. It's always too complicated. You're a doctor.
If you don't have any other questions, I will leave you two alone.
And he is on his deathbed. He is even blind. And I gotta say, this episode really redeemed him for me, I would say. I mean, he was kind of redeemed a few episodes ago, but I actually started to really like his character in this episode.
Look at me, Patrick.
I can see.
There's nothing left of you to punish. I'm here to help you see.
He gives a really good performance in the hospital bed as Gino says goodbye to him. Then we get a montage scene. Basically, the only two that are left that we actually end up seeing for the rest of the episode is Adam and Gino. We learn that Gino obviously had it from Patrick, so he's been fighting the illness. He fought it for like 10 or 15 years. We see them in protests. We see them going to funeral after funeral after funeral. There's a really cool shot actually in the episode where there's like a revolving door of gay men that continuously fall into their graves with Big Daddy like killing all of them in front of everyone. It's obviously a metaphorical scene, but I thought it was done really well. A lot of people did not think it was done really well. The fact that they were playing a really somber song in the background, the last 15 to 20 minutes really hits you. I also like the fact that they tried something different with the finale. I mean, it is still one of the classic AHS finales that's told completely out of order, but I do like the fact that it is a montage at the end and like kind of bookends the last episode. I do think it's a little rushed. I think if they had had an extra episode or two to give more finality to the characters, I would have liked that a lot more, such as Fran and Kathy. I don't think they're even in this episode. Kind of a waste, because what do these characters even end up doing? We really just focus on Adam and Gino, and one of those characters is not very good, and that would be Adam. Lo and behold, we see it is March 1st, 1992. Gino eventually does die of HIV, leaving Adam to be the sole survivor as of this season. He goes to Gino's funeral and attempts to speak. And that is where the season cuts to black. This season and this finale is honestly so much better than I'm making it out to be because it's such a hard thing to explain. I watched it like 3 or 4 times before this video to prepare myself. You really just have to watch that montage in order to fully soak everything in. I'm sure I missed a lot. But the main points are basically everybody dies. But yeah, I personally like that it's kind of like a montage music video style in the last like 10 minutes. A lot of people did not like it and there was a lot of backlash for it. But personally, I think there's a small group of people who were especially touched by it. This season also had a lot of homophobia directed towards it online. It was a hard time. It was a hard time to be an American Horror Story fan because this show has always been for gay people, even if its representation of that group of people is just not very good. This show, by and large, is made for queer people, is made for women, and straight men can watch it too, obviously, but there was just a lot. There was just a lot of homophobia towards this season. This season is also the lowest rated season in terms of like the Nielsen ratings. The cast obviously isn't like the best cast. I don't know. I liked it personally. There obviously, like I said, there are a lot of issues. The inclusivity issue, they didn't check that box. There was not a whole lot of script vetting going on. I also don't know how much Ryan Murphy was even involved in this season, seeing as he literally only wrote the first episode and then kind of focused on his 10 other projects that he had going on. And then seeing as how Indelicate, which is the next season that we're going to be talking about, by the way, he doesn't write a single episode of that season. I don't think his heart is in American Horror Story anymore. He's constantly making new shows, forgetting about the old ones. It's really sad to see the shows fall from grace. It used to be so good every single season, and each one had like minor little issues, you know, but like, I don't know, the newer seasons are just not as good. As much as I like this season, there's just a lot about it that is problematic, not very good. As far as the new seasons go, this and Red Tide are probably my 2 favorites in the last like 5 to 7 years. So yeah, that has been my recap of American Horror Story NYC. And make sure to watch out for American Horror Story Delicate video, which should be coming a week or 2 after the finale airs. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to be able to get that out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!